Diliberto, hoping to make it a 3-game match.
Now, we did get to see Mario Diliberto yesterday. When we cut over to our Standard Open, the first match that we did cover was him versus Huey Jensen. He gave Jensen his only loss in the tournament with his Elves deck via Junk Aristocrat. So Diliberto has already defeated some very good players in this tournament, a potential Hall of Famer being one of them. As we see, Reed is on a mulligan down to 6 cards. Diliberto is going to start off with a Temple Garden and a Doomed Traveler. I was watching Diliberto play over his shoulder in that matchup. Very skilled Junk Aristocrats player. Wouldn't be surprised to see him overcome what is perceived to be a bad matchup. Certainly doesn't hurt that Reed's on 6 cards this game.
David Reed in his sideboard has Curse of Death's Hold, which seems like it could be an excellent weapon against this Junk Aristocrats deck. There are a couple other cards that are quite good as well, but I know just you see that Doomed Traveler in play. You know that there are a lot of other moments besides that. Just getting rid of the Blood Artist and all of that. I wonder if we're going to see an appearance of that awesome sideboard card.
You know, the thing about Junk Aristocrats is, again, their individual card quality is not incredibly high. Doomed Traveler speaks volumes to that, but the synergies with this deck, once they do all come together, they get the ball rolling, they're very difficult to break up. As now here's a Lifebane Zombie from Diliberto. He's going to take a Hunt Match to the Fells, and you see David Reed's hand, it's going to be laid out. There's a Putrefy, there's a Bonfire of the Damned, and a Tragic Slip to go along with the Dragon Skull Summit and a Kessig Wolf Run. But you can believe that Reed probably kept this hand based off of the fact that Hunt Match to the Fells could stabilize the board for him. Now he has stabilized the board via those removal spells.
Now that's a good set of removal spells, though. I mean, we've got a Tragic Slip, which in conjunction with any removal will be able to kill, or any death will be able to kill practically any creature on the table that could possibly show up. And then Putrefy can literally kill anything that ends up hitting the table should he get to the mana, as long as it's targetable.
Yeah.
And Bonfire, a great way to sweep up the table after things have gone bad.
So we'll see how Reed does choose to use those removal spells that he does have. And again, Diliberto knows about them now. He's working on very, very good information. Imperfect now because Reed has drawn 1 mystery card, but he knows that there are 3 removal spells over there, and how he wants to go about navigating these next couple of turns, knowing that some things are going to die. That's going to be important for him to be able to win this game and even up this matchup.
David Reed passes his turn. Now remember, there's a Voice of Resurgence into play. Should he choose to interact with Mario on Mario's turn, that triggered ability is going to come and show some vengeance with that elemental that shows up. If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan with Cedric Phillips. This is the quarterfinals of the StarCityGames.com Open Series featuring the Invitational. We are in the Standard Open. Later today, we are going to be having our main event at 11:30.
Yeah, we'll be going on to our elimination rounds for the Invitational. If you guys haven't checked out the Invitational, feel free to go StarCityGames.com. Check out those Invitational interviews. We'll take a look at the top 8 deck list as well. Again, it is going to be a standard top 8. The underlying story of that tournament, can Jerry Thompson repeat? He is your defending Invitational champion. He has made back-to-back top 8s, and can he take another trophy home? Won't be his first, probably won't be his last either, here in New Jersey.
There's a lot of patience here from David Reed, just taking that damage. You know, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I would have probably been very tempted to Bonfire last turn.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising that he takes 3, 4, 5, 6 damage on the chin, basically using his life total as a resource right now. You also see a Scavenging Ooze in Reed's hand. That was his draw step. So how does he want to use these removal spells? Because he's got to start firing some of them off.
That Voice is still in play and scary.
You see Reed going through some math here. Maybe he's going to fire off a Putrefy, targeting that Voice of Resurgence, and say to himself, I need to Miracle a Bonfire of the Damned to get myself back into this game. But he's not going to cast any removal on his turn. That is very, very surprising, Adrian.
I think maybe he just Miracled a Bonfire.
It feels like he Miracled a Bonfire.
I mean, if not...
No, okay, it's a stomping ground.
Okay.
It's a stomping ground.
He already knows that his opponent just saw his hand, so a lot of those cards are not surprises.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very surprised that you don't see him cast a single card over the course of those turns. Again, he gets Lifebane Zombied. Diliberto knows that he has Putrefy, he knows that he has Bonfire of the Damned, he knows that he has Tragic Slip, and not to cast one. I guess, you know, what are you trying to accomplish as David Reed in playing Jund here? You have to fire away those spells. You have to use them to be able to stabilize your life total so that if you do draw a Thragtusk, you don't just get swarmed and it's irrelevant. That's the big question here, is what is his game plan moving forward right now?
I wonder if we're going to see a Bonfire for 1 now, followed by a Tragic Slip?
And really, how good is that bonfire for one? You know, it will take care of a Lifebane zombie. That's the thing that's going to happen. It will take care of the first half of Doomed Traveler. It will give Diliberto a spirit token, however. And then what are you going to try to do? The Voice of Resurgence going to give you a large elemental token. You know, you're probably going to want to kill a Skirt Stack High Priest so it can't start pumping out demons. I think, you know, for Reed, he needs to take a step back and figure out what he needs to try to accomplish to win this game, because not casting a spell in that previous turn seems like an operations error to me.
I mean, another possibility is a Putrefy. I think he might have a different plan entirely.
I mean, we do know he has a Scavenging Ooze in his turn, but he had that the last turn and did not, and chose not to cast it.
Looks like he's got the ooze to the front of his hand. It's all shiny. Shiny ooze.
Yeah. So now there's a Scavenging Ooze and passes the turn back. And now if you're Mario Diliberto, you know that your opponent has one mystery card in his hand, but now you know that you only have to worry about playing around exactly Tragic Slip right now. You know, potentially a second Tragic Slip, but you know that you can't cast Putrefy, you know you can't cast Bonfire the Damned right now, so you're working with some pretty good information for this turn.
Now remember that the Lifebane zombie has Intimidate, so that ooze can't even get in the way of that guy. I mean, it's reasonable for David Reed to block, let's say, the Voice of Resurgence, but what comes back is going to be at least a 4/4 plus a 5/5 flyer.
Yep. And we talk about the synergies that this deck does have, and that's exactly what you talked about. Voice of Resurgence dies, fine, comes back as a 4/4. Now you get to get an activation of Skirt Stack High Priest. That's going to be a 5/5 flyer. So now you're going to the skies and large on the ground versus a rather small Scavenging Ooze. This is exactly what Junk Aristocrats, wants to accomplish. Get those synergies, make it difficult for them to break up, and then get the enemy dead. And that's exactly what Diliberto is doing here, as he's going to go through the iterations in his head to figure out what he needs to do to shorten this game and not get top decked out via a card like Bonfire the Damned.
Let's pretend that that kind of semblance of attacks happens, right? After the Voice were to die, should the Voice die, David Reed could use a Tragic Slip to finish off the demon in the air, and then with a 5th land, could do a Bonfire for 2 and leave Diliberto with almost nothing.
Yep. And if that's what he's planning, you know, I think it's a good strategy. I don't know if it's the best strategy. You know, again, really just some caution into the wind there of just not playing a spell in his previous turn, and now this turn playing a Scavenging Ooze, a card that he drew on his previous turn. So I'd like to believe that he does have a plan in place. Maybe it's just making Diliberto think about some things, potentially force him into overthinking the turn.
Now remember, the 3 removal spells in David Reed's hand, Mario Diliberto saw them all.
Yes.
He knows that they're there.
So Diliberto, again, the player who's given Huey Jensen his only loss this weekend, a skilled magician going to turn a Lifebane zombie sideways in the face of a Tragic Slip, and just going to take the damage is Reed and pass the turn back.
Now he sees that Tragic Slip line that if he goes in with the Voice of Resurgence, sure he can get a demon, sure he can get an elemental, but the Slip will take care of it.
Yep. So Reed is going to draw his card. Conservative play from both sides of the board here. Kessig Wolf from the draw.
At this point, I'd be ecstatic to cast a Bonfire for 2.
Yeah. There's a Kessig Wolf run. I think, Adrian, we're going to see exactly what you mentioned.
Oh.
Or not.
Undo, undo. Doing some counting. I think he might be counting, okay, well, what happens if what happens when you, on the comeback, you're going to have an elemental that's a 2/2, you're going to have a 1/1 spirit. How bad can it get for the swing back?
Well, we're going to find out, Adrian, because here's a Bonfire the Damned, a card, again, that Diliberto knew about. So he knew that this could happen. And it does exactly happen right now. So X is going to equal 2 as it's placed onto the stack. See what Diliberto has? He has a Tragic Slip. So I like this play a lot. So he's going to try to slip his own creature. He's going to activate he's going to activate Skirt Stack High Priest, pump out a 5/5 token. Bonfire for 2 is going to clear up those things, but the Spirit token and the Elemental is going to be left behind. So I like this play a lot. Now a Tragic Slip to clear out that Scavenging Ooze, and that is going to do it. Beautiful play there from Mario Diliberto. So we're going to be going to a third and final game between Diliberto and Reed, and you can see with plays like that how he defeated Huey Jensen and how he is in this top 8. Very tricky.
That was amazing.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you noticed the little tiny fist bump he gave to the air. He did the play, little fist bump. He knew that that was awesome. And one of the things, he could tell what 3 spells, well, he knew what 3 spells David Reed already had. And David Reed, we talked about that turn 3 where he did not use the Bonfire of the Damned to do 1. And he was setting up for this very, very high reward situation where he would theoretically have the table almost completely clear. But what happened? Mario knew that that was a possible line, and instead of going in with, say, the Voice of Resurgence, getting a pair of huge creatures, and then having that be torn up by a Tragic Slip, followed up by a Bonfire, he goes in just for the 3, and then when David Reed makes the obvious play of tap out Bonfire, he's ready and takes David Reed down with a pair of Tragic Slips. Awesome. That was really awesome magic.
You can't ignore what happens when you're working with very, very good information. A card like Ataxian Probe showed that last year, where Delver players were working with very, very good information. Certainly didn't hurt that it cantripped, and it facilitated some very nice Snapcaster Mage draws, but you can't ignore what happens when you're working with incredibly good information. Mario Diliberto would not be able to make that play without Lifebane Zombie seeing the hand of David Reed. He's able to know exactly what's coming the entire time. He can play around Tragic Slip to the best of his ability, play around Putrefy the best he can, but most importantly, play around Bonfire the Damned. So that attack with that Lifebane Zombie, boy, did that look suspicious. Why only that, Mario? You've got 3 other creatures. 2 of them, if they die, who cares? Get in there, man. Get some damage in. But instead, he takes his time on his turn. He thinks things through, gets in with the Lifebane Zombie. Reed kind of shrugs, takes that damage, and Diliberto just says, all right, do your worst. I really hope you don't draw a 5th land for Bonfire, or do I? Does Tragic Slip his own guy, activates that Scritch Stack High Priest. All of a sudden, the game spirals out of control for Reed. Diliberto ties it up, and we take a look at the sideboards here for game number 3 between these players. As you know, they've already sideboarded. It looks like they're not going to go back to their boards, but you take a look at Reed's side here, Adrian, the sideboard on the screen for you. What do you think comes in here against Junk Aristocrats?
Well, I was actually looking at the Junk Aristocrats on the other sideboard, so give me a moment to pull up that with the Jund. Gosh. I like Golgari Charm against a lot of those 1 toughness things that are going to be out there from Blood Artist and such. It's possible Blood Artist was sideboarded out. I also like the Curse of Death's Hold for the same kind of reasons. And then when it comes right down to it, this can be a very strong mid-range matchup. Rakdos Returns is a very strange card here because sometimes the Junk Aristocrats deck has just emptied its hand onto the table, and other times it's sandbagging some cards, and it's very powerful to be able to wipe out their hand.
Yeah, I think you know, there's a lot of different ways that Reed can go in this matchup. I like Golgari Charm quite a bit. You know, he does have quite a few options at his disposal. I think Pillar of Flame is the easiest one to sideboard in. Of course, he's dealing with a deck that does have Voice of Resurgence and Scritch Stack High Priest, and now he also knows that Lifebane Zombie's in. So I will be surprised if that's not in. As far as on the Mario Diliberto side, we already know that he's brought in Lifebane Zombie, and after seeing in that game, definitely impressed. Only has 1 of them in his sideboard. Probably going to see that tick up to 2 or 3 copies in sideboards in the coming weeks. A card like Sin Collector, wouldn't be surprised to see that come in. Same thing can be said for Appetite for Brains. So those are just a few options at his disposal for this 3rd and final game between Junk Aristocrats and Jund. Whoever wins this match will be playing against Chad Castle and his Jund deck.
Yeah, one thing to note, we have a word from the floor. Kian Naran, our number 1 seed, has defeated Robert Brown. That means Jund has won 2-1 over Bant Hexproof.
So we see 2 Jund decks making it through. Will there be a 3rd? For Kian Naran, you're going to be playing against potential Hall of Famer Huey Jensen and his crazy mono green Elves deck. See how Huey feels about that matchup. That'll be our on-camera matchup next round. But as we see David Reed taking a look at a mulligan here to at least 6 cards. We'll take a look at Mario Diliberto's sideboard on the screen, yet again of 2 Deathrite Shaman, a Lifebane Zombie, 2 Sin Collector, War Priest of Thune, 3 Abrupt Decay, and the Resolve Charm, 2 Rave Revelation, 2 Appetite for Brains, and a Singleton Duress. Again, I really like Appetite for Brains in this matchup. I really like that Singleton Lifebane Zombie and those 2 Sin Collectors.
You know, I like all of those cards you mentioned. I even like the Duress a little bit. I know in speaking to some other Jund players, including recent PTQ winner Adam Jansen, who won our Legacy Legacy Open in Milwaukee. He says Duress is very good. If you take the Farseek out of his hand, sometimes his deck collapses, and I can't believe that would be any less true for David Reed here. Unfortunately, though, when you're a deck like Junk Aristocrats, which has a lot of interacting parts, the more that you sideboard your deck, you run the risk of becoming not the deck you want to be. So he can't go too far into his sideboard without being a little less Junk Aristocrat-y and a little bit too, perhaps, Rocky/Junky rather than Junk Aristocrat. So I do really like, specifically, the Sin Collector as an alternate version of Duress, because at least you've got a body, and that body can really interact with cards like your Skursdog High Priest.
Yeah, you know, the one thing you don't want to do is dilute your deck too much with discard spells, because you don't want to draw them, you know, on turn 7, turn 8, where they're not going to be as good anymore. So I agree with you that Sin Collector is basically Duress on steroids, for lack of a better term. Steroids being a 2-1 body, but, you know, it's better than not a 2-1 body in this matchup, because, as you mentioned, having that body out there does let you interact with some certain cards. Now, it does also open you up to getting hit by some removal as well, but at the end of the day, I think having a 2-1 body is more important than the mana efficiency of a Duress.
Now, if you remember from yesterday, Mario Diliberto's win over William Jensen, we already saw this last game, Game 2 versus David Reed. Mario really knows how to play this deck. He's played it quite a bit, and he's made some inspired plays. One of the inspired plays he made yesterday, he would have lost to William Jensen had he not realized how exactly to pierce together the perfect damage to finish Jensen off. Mario, no slouch with this deck. We see turn 1 land, turn 1 land. Both these players starting out without a turn 1 play. Turn 2, David Reed has Farseek? It is indeed Farseek.
You mean the God Draw?
Yeah.
The God Draw has been accomplished here. A turn 2 Farseek on the play against Mario Diliberto, who has 1 permanent. The only thing that for Mario that you can be happy about is that he took a mulligan to 6 instead of having an immediate snap keep of 7 cards. Scary road ahead for the Junk Aristocrats player.
If you are just joining us, good morning. This is the StarCityGames.com Open Series featuring the Invitational. We are in the Standard Open quarterfinals. Make sure that you're following SCG Live at SCG Live and joining in the conversation, #SCGEnvy. We see Appetite for Brains for Mario Diliberto, an incredible card against all of the powerful 4 and 5 drops that can come out of David Reed's deck. That would be Olivia Volderian, Huntmaster of the Fells, Thragtusk, and other cards as well, like Garruk Primal Hunter. Do any of them live in David Reed's hand?
Time to put them face up. Yeah, at least 3 of them. 2 Huntmaster of the Fells and a Thragtusk to go along with what I think for David Reed is a 4th land over there that he's hiding. So this was a pretty good mulligan to 6. Yes, it was. Wow. Wow, that's a good mulligan to 6.
So it's Huntmaster, Thragtusk, Forest.
What do you take if you're Diliberto? This is a tough situation because you see him taking a look at his hand right now, weighing his options. If he has another Appetite for Brains, I think he just takes out both Huntmasters in hopes that David Reed doesn't draw another land, but he's going to take out the first Huntmaster. There's a Sun Petal Grove tap, so he's got the Buddy land draw, but that means that a Huntmaster of the Fells is going to join the party here for David Reed as he draws a card for the turn. It looks like it was a Tragic Slip.
We see that Huntmaster. Hand now is Thragtusk Tragic Slip.
So in comes to play the flip card. There's your Wolf token and 2 life coming for the Jund player.
Mario Diliberto. You see that Farseek in David Reed's deck, or graveyard. A turn 3 Huntmaster. Very, very frustrating to deal with for almost any deck.
But here comes what looks to be that Singleton Lifebane zombie again, so that's going to snag that Thragtusk. And actually, the other card was not a Tragic Slip. Well, it's kind of like a Tragic Slip, just a permanent one in Curse of Death's Hold. So, wow, some good draws here from David Reed. And if he's able to draw a land, he can slam that enchantment down, but it doesn't look like he's drawn one just yet. But, wow, if you're Mario Diliberto,
that's a scary card.
Time is not on your side, my friend. As the draw actually for David Reed was a Scavenging Ooze. Reed's going to pass the turn back. He says, all right, I'm going to flip at least attempt to flip my Huntmaster and Ravager. It works. So there goes that Lifebane Zombie, and 2 life gets taken away from Diliberto.
Diliberto would be so happy to have a Duress right now.
Oh, yeah.
Now, of course, you can't guarantee that that's going to be the kind of draw that will happen. It doesn't make wanting a Duress now, it doesn't make it correct sideboarding it in, but certainly, if he had it, he would slam it.
Be hard pressed not to. And I think he might have a Sin Collector in his hand right now. Isn't it ironic? We talk about how much potentially better Sin Collector is than Duress in this matchup, but right now he'd much rather have a Duress than a Sin Collector. You see Tragic slip over there in Diliberto's hand. Morbid is active due to Ravager of the Fells killing a Lifebane zombie.
There we go. Take that, Ravager.
Big follow-up going to be a Sin Collector. That looks to be the case.
Well, let me relook and, okay, Scavenging Ooze. Now I've got a little more information, and I'm going to hope, says Mario, that you don't draw that land.
Mario's in the unenviable position of playing its opponent where basically all his draw steps are good. If it's a land, that means Curse of Deathhold is coming to play. If it's a spell, it means he can likely cast it. Very few uncastables for him right now, and so David Reed has to take slight turn off by casting just Farseek and Scavenging Ooze. That's it, just those two.
A delayed moment for that Curse of Death's Hold. Mario Diliberto really needs to do something, or else that curse is going to take care of him. Are there any cards that he might have brought in that would get him out of a curse?
I mean, he has 2 copies of Rave Revelation in his sideboard. I would be surprised if he boarded those in for the Singleton Curse that is in David Reed's sideboard. Of course, both these players working on perfect information as far as deck lists are involved, because they're given to the players both before and during the match while they're sideboarding. But again, to board in such a narrow effect for just one card, even though Curse of Deathhold is so good against Junk Aristocrats, is rather unlikely.
We see the Sin Collector march on in, knocking David Reed to 20.
Yep.
And nope, good. I was going to say, I saw the Doomed Traveler being brought to the fore. A Lifebane zombie. Let's get your Scavenging Ooze out of there while I can. Doomed Traveler. And we're going to see a Curse of Death's Hold take out all of these creatures, plus the Spirit, should David Reed choose to cast it. And he does.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Goodbye, team. And the Spirit comes into play and also dies. Mario pointing that out.
Yeah.
The judge puts the Spirit, and Mario's like, hang on a second, Judge. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I don't think so, my friend. And again, Diliberto does have 2 Lifebane zombies in his main deck to go along with an additional one in his sideboard. So as good as that card can be, it looks like it's on Verils to grow very large and try to get this game over with. It's on you, my friend!
It makes a lot more sense now that he put the Doomed Traveler that he knew that was going to die into play.
Totally.
Why? He can immediately put the that token from the Doomed Traveler onto the Varolz using Varolz' ability.
Yeah, Varolz right now, simply a 2-2. Starts off as a 2-2 and has a +1/+1 counter, but Curse of Deathhold is going to make it a 2-2, so that's why you see that Wolf token come into play. Here is Diliberto's plan. Please don't draw a removal spell. Please don't draw a removal spell.
Oh,
and now
Lord.
Scavenging Ooze is going to make the Varolz much, much worse. Wow, what a draw from David Reed, counteracting everything that Varolz was trying to accomplish. What a beating.
That was just devastating for Mario. And I have to say, when he laid that Doomed Traveler, I thought to myself, really? I'm really surprised by that. And you know what? After, when he followed up with the Varolz, that was one of those things where I was like, that's impressive. What a great play. We see him cast another Doomed Traveler, and then use a Tragic Slip to finish off that huge ooze, immediately put the Doomed Traveler onto the Varolz using Varolz' ability. Comes on in for 4-1 is 3.
So, right now, it is Varolz or bust. Diliberto is going to try to make a very, very large one of these, protect it, and just get into the red zone as often as he can, and hope that David Reed doesn't ever draw a removal spell or just draws a bunch of lands and can never interact. As Reed draws a mystery card, going to get in with the Wolf token, doesn't look thrilled about his draw step. Diliberto is going to go down to 10, overgrown 2, and pass the turn back, and that's what Diliberto needs to happen for the duration of this game.
Okay.
Orzhov Charm, the draw.
Orzhov Charm, very, very useful little card there. And that's a second Varolz.
Yeah, so
awesome thing. He can put this second Varolz into play,
yep.
Then choose to have the old Varolz live and have yet another pair. Well, he can't put him on it right away. It'll take him a little bit of time. But yeah, I think what he's probably doing is consulting and confirming the M14 rules.
I guarantee that's what he's asking. He steps away from the table because he doesn't want to give away any information to David Reed, but basically he's saying, all right, if I play another of the same legendary permanent, I can let that one go to the graveyard, and then I can scavenge onto it, correct? And that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to play another copy of Varolz, leave the current one in play that does have the counter so he can scavenge onto it the following turn. And again, he's just hoping to fade draw steps, and there's a lot of them that he needs to fade, as Diliberto is going to take 2 more from a wolf token. There is another land. So Diliberto's plan is coming to fruition here.
And we see the removal of the extra Varolz, turning our Varolz into a 6/6, -1/-1 is a 5/5. Big beats here, and another land for Mario Diliberto.
So now what Diliberto needs, Adrian, he just needs a creature that can, never mind. The words are going to stop coming out of my mouth because there's a handshake, and that is it. What he doesn't need is a Miracle Bonfire there. That's what he doesn't need. So David Reed with Jund dispatches Mario Diliberto, playing Junk Aristocrats. A Miracle Bonfire the Damned has claimed another victim, and we've talked about at length about Jund in this standard format, and all 3 of them are moving on to the semifinals, where we have 1 man left that is not playing Jund. He's our only hope. Huey Jensen has the dispatch of the Bonfires, the Olivias, and the Thragtusk. And if anybody can do it, it's a future Hall of Famer.
That's right. That's right. Now.